Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Our Parsha, this Shabbat, I just told you what it is. What is it? Terumah. And Heather just sang about it. In it, we have the beginnings of the longest single passage in the entire book of Exodus. It goes to the end of the book and is only interrupted by the incident of the golden calf. At its core is the building of the Mishkan, their sanctuary, or Mishkan Tefillah, as our prayer book is called, our Siddur, a dwelling place for prayer. The Israelites were commanded to build it and make it the very center of their worship and a visible sign that God was always with them in their midst. Especially after the golden calf incident, it was clearly apparent that they needed a physical reminder of the one true God. Remember, they were idol worshipers, and now everything had to change. What is interesting is that it is thought there are two creation stories, and I am not referring, you Torah scholars, to those two that are in Bereshit. There is the one at the beginning of all time when God created the universe and all things in it. And now here in this Parsha, Parsha Terumah, when God commands the Israelites to create, to build a sanctuary for the divine to dwell among them. They were wandering in the wilderness of the unknown, and they needed a constant physical reminder that God was with them always. They knew nothing of this one true God. They were a people in training. They had to trust Moses, who some may have thought a madman, but mob psychology and an unwillingness to be left behind might have driven them to comply. Now, others may have truly had faith, but faith is a tricky and often fickle thing. For some, maybe it comes and goes, believing when it is most needed, but regretfully discarding as soon as heartache and loss and trouble occurs. Yet that is when it is most needed. God knew that both he or she and they, the Israelites, were being tested. That's why the plagues that were sent to Pharaoh numbered 10. They were there to prove a point, to attest to the miraculous nature and the power of the Almighty, and the number 10 in Kabbalah and Gematria equals God. Sir Rabbi Jonathan Sacks speaks of the correlation between the creation story and the Israelites' command to create a dwelling place for God. He states, the connection between them is not incidental. As a number of commentators have noted, the Torah invokes a series of verbal parallels. The effect is unmistakable. The latter mirrors the former. As God made the universe, so too did he instruct the Israelites to make the Mishkan. It is their first great constructive and collaborative act after crossing the Red Sea, leaving the domain of Egypt and entering their new domain as the people of God. Just as the universe began with an act of creation, so Jewish history, the history of a redeemed people, begins with an act of creation. Just like our ancestor of old, Jacob said, after wrestling with the angel and becoming Yisrael, God is in this place and I did not know it. Well, there are times in our lives when we may feel exactly the same way. It is our challenge and our divine purpose to always wrestle with the angels along with our belief and our faith in order to feel truth and connection to the divine essence. As our prayer book says, God loves becoming. That means God loves witnessing the struggle that is found in the questioning and the fighting, in the searching, in the crying, in the pleading. God loves the process Because as we are evolving and asking those questions and testing our faith, we are becoming, we are searching for that connection. It matters to us to have that glorious connection to divinity. So how is this valid for us today? Here at Emet, we built a physical edifice with which to house God's divine light and in which to worship. And then what? We sold it. And then what? We lost people. The whole point of being God's chosen people, a light unto the nations and his emissaries of Emet, truth, and Torah in this world, is to be a people of faith. We are no different than our ancestors of old. We are wandering in the vast, dark wilderness of present times, where much seems as harsh and difficult to process as it must have been then. We wandered, and wherever we went, the Mishkan traveled with us. After the destruction of the two holy temples came the rabbinic era, where we learned that wherever we go, so too is God. And we don't need a building to identify with, to bear witness to the glory of God. We carry God with us wherever we go. And he or she is actually much more easy to access that way. We don't have to travel to a physical space, although it is nice when you guys show up here in the sanctuary and you online. We just need to figure out how to travel inside our own selves to access that space in our heart and in our souls where God dwells. We are, after all, created B'Tselem Elohim in the image of God. God is always with us in our best of times, and yes, too, in our worst of times. If we just allow ourselves to surrender to that idea, that premise, to feel it, to have belief, yes, even when maybe feeling it not. Just as was sung during the Holocaust, as many were led to the gas chambers to a certain death, Ani Ma'amim. I believe with perfect faith that there will be a better time than this. And I believe in the coming of Mashiach, the perfect world where atrocities will no longer be the norm and faith in the divine among all man and womankind will prevail. We need this to be true now more than ever. The fate of our country and the fate of our world, the fate of humanity demands it. And yet, how do we get there without faith? For some, it's easier to focus on rules and commands, structure, and the order required in the building of something physical. But what of building the physical body and the mind to house the divine to guide us? Meditation, prayer, or a devotion to music, art, gardening, or physical activity, even surfing, finding that space within the curl to feel God. Or like in the movie F1, where Brad Pitt describes a singular moment when he was in an altered state of time and space, where he was flying. Little did he know what he was desperately seeking to experience again was God. God was there in that moment. Just like in the curl of the wave, God is there in that silent moment. When I worked as an actress, there was a point while creating and portraying a character where you physically disappear. You are this very tiny voice, much like God, in the background directing the show, while the character comes to life. Once you have experienced it, you search for that moment, much like Brad Pitt, in every character portrayal after, because you know that is when you are really there, and that character comes to life. Kabbalistically, even God had to retract and withdraw in order to make the space for his creation, us and our world, to manifest and come into being. The interesting thing is that when I gave up the entertainment business for the God business, I found that I'm still always searching for that moment when I disappear and there is God, so that I can connect, and maybe so too can all of you. The reason I gave acting up for all of this is because this is actually real, and it's not a performance for me. This is the constant physical, emotional, and spiritual act of assessing and communicating with something higher for me and for you. In my 30-plus year career, when I worked as a cantor, I have stood beside many rabbis who also were in the search for that quest and that unwavering belief in God. Sometimes, at the darkest periods of my life, or when recovering from an illness or a personal challenge, and then having to come lead a service, those times and those services are sometimes my very best, because I am fighting to feel God, struggling to channel God when needing to feel him or her the most. That is what sets me apart at times from many of my colleagues. That is what drove me to be a rabbi rather than just a cantor. It was my mission, my charge, my command by God. I was asleep and then I was awake. I had to be a single parent and spend hours at all times of the day and the night to accomplish that goal in order to be of service to the one true God and all of you. The Israelites were commanded to build a tabernacle to attest to the glory of God while wandering in the wilderness. Now, we too must do the same. We don't own a building. So what? But what we do have command and control over is our own selves. Much as God had two creation stories, so too do we here at Temple Emet. How do we collectively continue our journey without the building that we built? How do we fulfill the command to create, learning instead to build the space within ourselves for God to dwell? Now is our test. It was easy in our beautiful building. I had the same experience when I was in Texas. I was in an over 3,000 plus congregation, 9,000 people at High Holy Days, big, giant ceiling, 4 stories high, laden with brick and gold. And then I realized I need to know if what I'm feeling is, the Cecil B. DeMille theatrical thing. So I went to help another struggling brand new congregation while I was still working at that place that was in a little tiny strip mall next to a Domino's Pizza, where we smelled all the sausage and the pepperoni cooking on those pizzas all through Shabbat. And I knew that sometimes I actually felt God more in that tiny little strip mall than I felt sometimes in that big giant room with the 120-person choir. So the challenge sometimes is to feel God in those moments when it's not so quite grandiose, or in the moments when we are devastated and laid low. So how do we fulfill this command? We all have Torah inside of us. How do we find as much glory and connection within our own soul and consciousness? We are Emet. We do things differently is our motto. We have always done things differently, and hopefully we will continue to do things differently. May we attract more like-minded people to join us on this journey officially, so that we can continue to grow and to thrive and to share God's divine light in collaboration and communion. And those of you at home in the cyberspace world, you can click, I think there's a QR code, and you can actually donate to help us with this journey. As we move toward Purim, Passover, Shavuot, and beyond, all great opportunities to connect to the divine, let us prepare ourselves for what's coming and the redemption and renewal that is possible. Let us have faith in that which is unseen, or at least have faith in ourselves and each other. We are Chevruta, a community of friends and a temple family. May God recognize our attempts to build a mishkan for him or for her to dwell in as we continually reach to create and recreate ourselves. May our faith and our collective combined journey always be a reflection of God's divine light and ultimate purpose. Kemi Hiratzon, may it be God's will. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.